Tokyo is one of the most desired destinations for Americans. Maybe it's the anime or gamer culture. Maybe it's the history and religious culture. Whatever the reason, the draw to Japan as an exotic destination is certain. But what's it like to actually live here as a Western expat? I'm going to ask my friends Mike and Christina that very question.
Okay, so thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. So we got Mike and Christina, right? And so how long have how long have you been married, first off?
10 years this April.
10 years, okay. That's,
long time.
That's a pretty good time. And how many of those years did you spend together before you decided to move? Like, you're English,
Yep.
and you're Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go back even further then. Those two aren't near each other, so how did you meet?
No. Yeah, very interesting story.
Yeah, that's a story for you.
That's definitely a story, yeah. We played an online game together.
Okay.
And yeah, we met online, spoke online for a few years.
That's very cool. All right.
Yeah, she came to England, I went to Canada, and
Yeah.
I never went home. I just decided to stay in Canada for a year, and then we both moved back to England and got married in England a couple of years later.
Yeah. So, and then we lived in the UK for 8 years, maybe something like that. So,
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you were in Canada? Or, no, you went to England.
In England.
You moved to England, okay. So you're really the one moving mostly here. You like moving.
Yeah, I'm the nomad.
Is it that Canada's boring, or is it?
No, I just
What part of Canada?
the middle of nowhere.
The middle of nowhere, so it is
Prince
boring.
Edward
Okay,
Island,
all right, yeah, all right.
So, yeah.
And what part of England? London?
In the north,
Okay,
yeah, Leeds, Manchester.
okay.
Yeah.
And so you're in England then, and then how long were you in England then before you made your first move as a couple?
Well, we sort of stayed kind of in the same general area for the whole time we kind of lived there. So we stayed around Leeds for the majority of the time that we lived in the UK, and then we like to travel a lot though, so we always that's how we kind of ended up coming here in the first place. So we came to visit Japan 3 times before we actually decided to move here. So we visited for probably collectively like maybe 2 months or something like that, 3 months, a few weeks at a time here and there, and then that's when we kind of thought, yeah, we could live there, we could try that out.
That's great. So when you decided, so was it that you wanted to move to Tokyo, or was it anywhere in Asia, and then you narrowed it down?
It was definitely Japan, specifically Japan, but not necessarily Tokyo. But we both really like Tokyo. It's just there's not really anywhere like it.
Why did Tokyo win out? What were the other ones, the contenders?
Because of the way that we came here. I mean, I really like Osaka. Osaka's a great city. We visited a lot of places in the countryside too, though, that are pretty amazing. So, we don't. We can't drive here, so a city is important to us. So the countryside is beautiful, but maybe not practical for us.
Yeah, once you get away from the big cities, the transport links are not as good.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult to get around, especially the countryside areas.
So Tokyo is it's just the weirdest place in the world. There's so many unique things and interesting things. And
Right.
Well, when we came to visit, we kind of thought we'd like to try and live here because it's so different to I'm literally from the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
The UK is exactly how you expect it to be. It's, a
Right.
lot of older buildings and things like that, and then you come to Japan and it's kind of, neon lights and just
everywhere you
lots
can
of
live is like
history.
new builds, and the apartment buildings are ridiculously big. And,
So it's a pretty big culture change. Even beyond Tokyo, it's a whole culture change. Right, yeah. So you moved here, and what was that process like? Did you come out and visit for a while and get to know the area, or did you just jump right in?
We kind of knew, we had traveled pretty extensively kind of around at least this area of Japan anyways. So we knew quite a lot of areas, but we hadn't specifically been to the place where we moved. So we kind of bought in sight unseen.
Okay.
We took a bit of a leap of faith.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We actually didn't close the place where we were going to live until when we came here. It was sort of as soon as Japan allowed people to come back in. That's sort of when we came. So we were in quarantine for 2 weeks, and we were still kind of trying to nailed down the place we were going to live while we were in quarantine at a hotel. So
that's awesome. Let me make sure that thing still works. Okay. So when so you make the move in, and what was the most challenging part of the move? Was it finding a place, or?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Definitely finding a place is super difficult. I think when you look at the language barrier as well, makes it obviously an extra level of difficulty. And it's not like, if we're in Canada or England, we can just give them a call and chat through what we're after, and they'll tell us, maybe look here, or we can go and look at some of these places. We couldn't really do that, so I think we ended up you must have looked at hundreds of places before we came, narrowed them down, kind of sent them to the guy at the school I work for, and would get him to then contact the companies for the short list that we'd made. And I think after doing that twice and not being successful on any of them, it was this kind of dawning on us how difficult it would be to get somewhere. So it's definitely the most stressful point of living in Japan, no matter what you will actually face living here day to day. It's that the
initial
month,
couple of weeks,
finding somewhere to live, and getting the bills set up, and getting your mobile phone, your credit card, those kind of things. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah, people say, it's hard as a foreigner to find a place to rent or to do things like open a bank account. But I think, and we sort of thought, whatever, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We've done this a few times now because we, have lived in a few different places. But now that's true, and I think it's when it comes to things like opening bank accounts and paperwork and things like that, Japan is really sort of, we can do a lot of things in the UK and in Canada, and I'm sure in the States as well, with online banking, and you can pay your bills online, and you can sort of set up all these accounts online, and things like that. Not generally speaking, in Japan, it's probably something you need to set up in person in the first instance, through some kind of a pre-organized meeting. There's a stack of paperwork that's going to be associated with it. And it's all really sort of rigid process. There's very little flexibility in a lot of those kinds of things. So that was a strange thing to adapt to when you're used to sort of just, do you know what, I think I'll get a new phone today. And you can go out and you can just do that easily.
Yeah.
You can't do that here.
That's interesting. I think because, just as someone who just got here yesterday, I kind of always looked at Tokyo as some sort of Ridley Scott-like, place with like the future. But then when I'm watching and doing research, people are like, it's mostly a cash society still. I'm like, really? I would think that at this point it's all eyeball-based, and but no, it's a lot of cash.
You should see the amount of paperwork they have in the office. I guarantee you.
The fax machine is alive and well in Japan.
Wow.
Really, in businesses, absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So how was your Japanese at this point when you decided to make this move? I mean, that's probably got to go into the thought process, right? Is we should probably speak Japanese.
It wasn't great.
I had taken a woefully inadequate Japanese class at university in Leeds, which did not prepare me. It wasn't great, but I mean, we had this kind of idea that okay, we'll come here, maybe we'll take sort of like an evening class or something like that, and we'll pick it up when you're immersed in the society. You'll pick it up. You won't. It's not that easy.
A lot of people that you will speak to on a day-to-day basis, it's the same kind of phrases, hello, good morning.
Yeah, it's like learning a script.
Thank you, and you don't quite understand, but you learn enough to be able to use the language to a level that you can get through the day-to-day. And everyone else that you kind of speak to, especially as an English teacher, they want you to speak English. They'll only speak English to you. They want you to speak English. So the times when you actually pick up any Japanese is just listening to them speak to each other, and obviously that's only for me and not necessarily for Christina. So.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like you kind of learn the little scripts for your interactions when you go to the grocery store, when you go shopping for things, when you want to pay bills, when you want to go to the bank. It's the same sort of conversation you always have. So it doesn't necessarily lend itself to language learning.
So where are you at now? After how many years have you been here now?
About a year and a half.
Yeah, just
8?
over a year and a half.
Yeah.
Wow. So where are you at now in Japanese level? Are you to the point where occasionally you still are like, what did you say? Or are you pretty?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, definitely.
You're still okay.
It's, I think, and depending on what you want to do, I mean, there's so many different levels of Japanese. So if you want to work in a sort of a Japanese company, then there's, keigo and really formal Japanese that you need to learn. That's language you would never use outside of that setting. We're not even conversational at this point. Not really. I mean, we can have a simple conversation. Ask you how you are. How's the weather? This kind of thing. But it's not. I couldn't discuss politics with you in Japanese.
I think it's something you really have to focus on and have that drive to kind of just, get home after work and put a couple of hours in every day. And if you don't do that, it's not something you're just going to kind of just pick up naturally.
It's too different.
It's too difficult of a language.
I think it's different. We're probably in kind of a strange position because if I was here by myself or if he was here by himself, we'd have been very much forced to be a lot more fluent than we are at this point. But because, we can speak English to each other every day.
Right.
So, we were not forced to have that interaction all the time. If we want to interact with someone, we have each other, whereas, maybe somebody that's here by themselves wouldn't have that sort of as an option. So,
It's the same for a lot of expats as well, though, I think, because especially around this area, there's so much of an English-speaking community that you might see on the Facebook group. There's so many people that will post looking to do this, looking to do that.
That's
there's
true.
so many social networks that people can use and meet up. So you find those comfort zones, and I think because of that, people don't necessarily get into that out of their comfort zone and just have to really push on their Japanese to improve, because unless they use it for work, then they don't need to, right?
Even the Japanese friends, that we have here, they fluently speak English. So
they want to speak English.
Yeah, so they want you to speak English with them so they can practice.
So socially, where? So you've been here. Have you been in the same? You've been in Tokyo for 8 years. You haven't gone outside of Tokyo, so you've been here for the most part for 8 years, and you made a lot of friends. And are those friends mostly Japanese or other expats?
Mostly Japanese, to be honest.
Yeah. Japanese,
They're pretty social. Obviously, we've had COVID and things for the last couple of years, which has made it a bit more difficult. But generally they tell you about the drinking party culture here, where everyone goes to work, and then after work you're expected to kind of go out with your colleagues and have some drinks. And we were I was anyway looking forward to that interaction, because it kind of forces your Japanese to improve. But because of Corona, they cancelled all that. So the only way I've been able to do it is with a few of my colleagues that don't really care, and we go out with those Japanese colleagues a few times.
So you met through online gaming, so that's obviously something you both are into, obviously, is gaming. Does that help bridge the gap culturally, because Japan is like the mecca of games?
To some extent, yeah, I think so. Especially, I like Nintendo things, and Nintendo's insanely popular here. So, the first day that we met, there's what is he called? The sort of head teacher. At his school, the first day that we met him, he said, my wife and I play Animal Crossing. I heard you play Animal Crossing. So, it's a bit of a conversation starter, I guess.
That's cool. Yeah, that's kind of something to break the ice, So I've always been curious, people who meet through online gaming.
Sure.
Do you guys ever get jealous when each other are online? Like, if you hear them talking, you're like, wait, what's going on there? Because I always wondered that. Like, is there always like, that's how he meets girls? That's how he...
That's true. I never really thought about it.
No, I never really.
No, you don't get jealous? Okay. I was always curious about that. I was always like, no, you're not allowed to play the game anymore now. We met, so that's it.
As far as I know, it's no problem.
No, it's not. Now that you think about it, no, I'm kidding. No, it's not. Yeah.
We mostly played together. But even these days, when we play different games, it's something we think about. We've been together so long now, it's not really a thought. We're stuck with each other.
So in coming, you have the language barrier. You have some challenges in getting a place. What was the biggest outside of those two hurdles? Was it, employment? You're teaching English, which is the most common job for for a British person here. Yep. So actually, that's a good one. Who comes to the English classes? What I mean, obviously Japanese people, but I mean, what are they trying to get out of it professionally?
So I work on behalf of the prefecture. So the prefecture will have a number of English teachers that they kind of assign to all the different schools. So
you didn't mention that he works in a high school.
yeah, I work in a
okay,
school,
cool.
So my students are 13, 15 to almost 18.
So you're actually in a high school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay. So is it? So in the U.S. we have obviously school districts, and so you're an actual employee of the school district.
Yeah.
You're not like a contractor. You actually work.
Yep.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to.
How did the kids treat you?
They're great. Yeah, I'm quite lucky. My school's like one of the top schools.
Yeah.
So their approach to learning is pretty good. I think one of my days I'm supposed to go to this different school, which is out in the countryside, and maybe their approach is a little different. So, teaching in those two contrasting environments is very different.
That's interesting.
It's quite an academic school that you work at regularly, isn't it? So.
Yeah, the one I work at regularly, their English is pretty good. So you can have a short conversation with most students. Other students will come up and talk to you about everything and anything. They'll ask you
on the way home.
They'll ask you what England is like, what you ate for lunch, what you have for breakfast, and you have to get used to that glisten in their eye when they get to speak English, because for them it's a good opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not just a normal conversation.
So that's a big part of it. So not just teaching English, but also some of the culture, mannerisms, and stuff like that together. That's interesting. Yeah. That's something they can't really get on Rosetta Stone. Is someone actually saying, okay, you have to, more affirmative with that.
Exactly. This is what it's actually like, and this is what we actually do, and here are some of our family traditions. You won't find that kind of stuff on Google, right?
The Christmas things.
Yeah, there's tons.
They couldn't believe. I don't know what you know about Japanese traditions at Christmas, but Christmas is kind of more like it's more like our New Year's or like a Valentine's Day. It's a holiday for couples.
Okay.
And
in Japan.
They go on. They eat Christmas cake, which is strawberry cake, and they eat Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Tradition to eat KFC on Christmas Day.
And you need to book this chicken weeks in advance if you want to have chicken on. And
the queues for KFC on Christmas are insane. Yeah.
And they couldn't believe though, the kids. He did sort of a quiz for the kids, and he said, what do they eat in England for Christmas? And everybody says, Kentucky Fried Chicken, right?
Yeah,
no.
It's a good Christmas dinner. Yeah, KFC. Yeah, why not?
So roast turkey was definitely not something they even think about. Yeah, for sure.
So is it unusual to have an expat in the high schools like this, or is this kind of a normal thing for them?
I think it's fairly normal. Yeah,
really? That's interesting. I never knew that. That's really smart.
Just because it's like the entry job for just about everyone that moves over, basically. I think generally people will usually work there around sort of 6 months to year and a half, 2 years, and then move on to something else, because it gives them employment, which is you need, believe me, to get registered for anything here. And then once you've got your Japanese up to a decent level, or found what you want to do, then you can break off from the English teaching and go into tech, or go into work in a business, or whatever it is you want to do. So almost all, if you see a bunch of LinkedIn profiles, even from some of my friends or colleagues, you'll see at the start it's ALT, and then after that it's tech company, or moved here, got married to a Japanese lady or man, and then moved on to some different companies, and they'll all have that English position at the bottom. It's so common.
Makes sense.
It's a foot in the door, isn't it? So, yeah.
A lot of people know they love the country and the culture, or they like the anime, or they like the language. But generally, if you want to get in the country an easy way, then English teachers.
From economically, so Tokyo is obviously a very expensive city. I mean, I know you're not from downtown London, but London's number one, right, in the world of what's expensive cities to live. Yeah. And you're from middle of nowhere, Canada, so probably not too expensive.
Not so expensive.
And so economically, how do you find it here? Do you think do you have a better quality of life here, you think, economically, or do you think it'd be better in England or Canada?
Probably Definitely not Canada right now. I think things are really expensive right now, and the cost of living in England.
Yeah, the cost of energy has increased by like 40%.
So for a teacher salary, you think you're doing? Would you be doing better in England at teacher salary, or you think you're doing better here? How do they pay the teachers here? Because we pay our teachers horribly in the States.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was great. Yeah, I think it's pretty comparable.
I think yeah. I mean, I think generally speaking, things are, when it comes to things like, I don't know, internet, phones, sort of utilities, cost of groceries, maybe a little bit less so, but I think things here are probably a little bit cheaper than in the UK. Definitely less expensive than Canada. I think probably, sort of, if you had a similar salary in the UK as you have here, I think you would have a better quality of life here for the same money. Yeah.
That's good. That's interesting. That's because I think
you have to
the perception of Tokyo is expensive, but you're saying actually, if someone's living in the States right now, obviously depending what city, they may economically do better working here.
I think it depends. So we don't live directly in Tokyo. We live in Saitama.
Okay.
So it's really easy to get in from where we live. It's all about sort of, if you move sort of more than 10 minutes away from a train station, for example, in Tokyo, the price of whatever your rent might be or the cost of a house, it falls off a cliff. Things are much, much cheaper, if you go that little bit further out. So for us, Saitama is a really sort of common place for people to live and commute into Tokyo.
Okay.
So you'll see rent prices drop like 30-40% just going from
with a half-an-hour
Tokyo
train
to
ride,
Saitama, which is crazy to me. But
yeah,
I think if you look around and you know which areas you want to be in and what your budget is, there's kind of an area for your budget. If you want to, like, a lot of companies have a lot of apartments down in like Minato area, so you'll see a lot of expats live around that area because the company kind of says, "Here, we have apartments in this area." And they'll place them in those apartments. So,
yeah, I mean, if you want to live in the middle of Shinjuku, it's not comparable to anywhere. It will be wildly expensive.
It's expensive.
But if you want
small.
to live sort of 2 stations away from the main line or something like that, then you can live here really reasonably, I think.
Okay.
You'd be surprised.
And so I'm really curious. I'm really excited you're a teacher, actually, at the school district and everything, because that was kind of one of the things I was hoping to interview when I go around people is talk to teachers, because in the U.S. our education system we're hemorrhaging teachers because we don't pay well. Parental apathy is at an all-time high. It's like your babysitters and students. I mean, if you don't have a YouTube following, they don't care. I mean, you're nobody, so why they listen to you? I mean, there's plenty of people on YouTube to tell them to listen to you. How do you find the Japanese students in this? Are they, is that perception that they're more studious and stuff like that? Is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think definitely. I think they're kind of, the way that they're brought up is that to be successful, they have to be successful in school. And I think that's like number one for most Japanese children, is to start learning early and start learning intensively, should we say. So they'll go to school, but they'll also go to like study school on extra days, on evenings and weekends, and especially the kids in my school work incredibly hard. These are like future doctors or lawyers or we'll go into science and medicine, that kind of thing. So they all work incredibly hard, and they wouldn't be surprised to see them go home at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. every single day. I remember one of my first days at school, just speaking to one of the students, and just as a normal question, I was like, what are you going to do after school today? School ends at 3 p.m. in England. You go and hang with some friends, or do some socializing or whatever. And he was like, just couldn't believe that I'd asked that question. He was, really confused. It's just like, I'm gonna study, obviously. And I was like, okay, then what about after that? He said, well, then I'll eat, and then I'll go to sleep, and then back to school. And that's just
that's it. That's life. Wow.
And that's their expectation. Just and that's not. They don't have the expectation that that's going to be bad, or that they're, it's a really difficult schedule for them, and they don't understand that because that's all they've ever known. But I think once they get to the end of high school and they start to take those university entrance exams, which is the most important part for a student here in Japan, even more so than their actual degree, if they get into a good school, sometimes that's even more important than their final grade.
Right.
Because being able to put the school is all the companies that hire see, and they're not too bothered about what their final grade is. It's just they went to Waseda University or Tokyo University.
So how about parents? How often do you meet with the parents? Is that a pretty frequent thing? And what do they, education really important to them? Are they emphasis?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, and obviously you can imagine that they've been controlling their
They're
child's
pretty,
education.
they're pretty involved and engaged in the whole thing.
From a really young age, so yeah, they're watching you like a hawk, believe me. Yeah, if their exam scores are going down, then they're definitely the first to ask questions. Yeah,
What's the technology like in the school? Are they using old school textbooks, or is it all on a tablet, or in between?
It varies. Mostly private schools use a lot of technology, like they'll have the whiteboards and the iPads kind of thing. But with my school being a public school, they just don't have the funding at like a district level to be able to give that kind of tech. So they're still on blackboards and chalk and textbooks.
So you had an interesting thing there, public schools. So how popular are private schools?
Very, extremely.
Very, okay.
Yeah.
So
also very expensive.
What percentage do you think of kids go to private school versus public in the area?
I think there used to be less availability for private schools, and they were just the super top, 5%. But I think as more and more private schools have been built, they have these better facilities and they promise this better education, and they can charge these really high fees that is becoming more and more popular. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I think there's at least 10 to 12 schools near the district that I'm in that are private.
Right.
But you can really notice a difference when you visit those schools.
That's interesting. So is there any sort of supplement for the parents to pay for the private school? Is like a school voucher program, or they just pay all of it on their own? And so that's that kind of emphasis based on it, huh?
Detail, but as far as I know, it's just they're willing to pay for it. I think they make 2 payments over a year, and it's really common for parents to pay the tuition in full for those kind of schools. Yeah.
Okay.
But is the schooling better? Is the education better? I don't know.
So you're at a public school, and so do you have school uniforms?
Yeah, every school.
So what are the private schools really offering the public schools parents don't feel they're getting, or what makes it worth it for them to spend that extra money?
I think it's all about how things are perception.
Okay.
It's all about being able to say that you went to a private school and the name of the private school holds weight in itself. And that's all. I think that's everything. That's all it is, to be honest. The most important thing. There's other probably facets to it, but I think the most important thing is just perception.
Interesting. So in the school system, so there's no vouchers or anything like that. They're paying for it all themselves. What kind of what's the average cost you think of a private school? Any idea? I know you're in the situation where you
I have no idea, but I can check for you afterwards. I have no idea. It's expensive.
It's expensive, right? But the parents are doing it because they perceive it being, that's better. Interesting.
Because when they apply to a university, they want to be able to say they came from this school, this private school, any advantage they can. Yeah.
And your school schedule Monday through Friday?
My school actually does Monday through Saturday.
Really?
Every other week, so. They
only get
2 weeks in A week and a B week. A week.
Oh, okay.
Monday to Saturday.
Yeah, I've seen. Actually, I went to a school like that when I was in middle school once. So it's kind of
Monday to Friday.
Right. Interesting. How's that schedule for you?
They don't need me to work on the Saturday, so that's
so good. Yeah.
So just Monday to Friday for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but obviously, many Japanese schools and different to probably schools in America, definitely England and Canada is they run their own clubs. Systems, so it's very, very common for students to stay at school after school until 9 p.m. whether they're studying or they're in soccer club or baseball club or whatever club. And there's not just these few sports that you'd kind of expect to see in America, like American football team or any kind of major sports team. But in the school here, they have, I think, about 46 in my school, 46 different clubs. I think they need a minimum of 3 members to be able to call it a club. So they have everything from space and chess and, tea ceremony, Japanese harp.
So is that the standard for Japanese schools like that? Whereas we have our summers off, here they're pretty much going pretty steadily.
And for teachers, they have to have like a main teacher that oversees each of those clubs and a substitute. So if you can imagine, that's 46 clubs covered by at least 2 teachers. That's pretty much every single teacher. So unless a teacher has like young children, really young children, they are asked to stay extra time until like 8, 9 p.m. every day to oversee these club activities, and they don't get paid for that. It's volunteer only, and that includes weekends, national holidays. They'll often have games with other schools on national holidays. Christmas time, they'll have games with other schools. So these teachers work incredibly.
So do you have music programs at your school?
Yep.
And you have art programs?
Yep.
And so all the stuff we're cutting away, you guys still have, obviously. And so now this is it. I'm so thrilled you're an actual high school teacher, because when I hear someone in Japan teaching English, I picture them teaching Japanese businessmen weird colloquialisms. Like, what do they mean when they say this?
They do exist, like one-to-one or private tutoring is definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So but from Canada, you have more of a front row seat to the United States train wreck of education.
I think we're probably not in any better position. So,
this is you think it's substantially better than what we're seeing in North America?
Here? I think you can really see a difference in the way that kids act here as well. It's really apparent that something is really different because they're sort of quiet, respectful. It feels like in Japan, kids can be kids for longer. Whereas, I don't know, in Canada anyways, and in the UK, it feels like they grow up really fast. But I think because they have all these kind of extracurricular activities and clubs and things, and it's not seen as sort of weird or, you're not the odd one out if you do it. You're probably the odd one out if you don't do it. So they're really encouraged to sort of, have a hobby, have an interest in something, and I think they're better for it. It keeps them sort of, it gives them hobbies and things to do that aren't sort of, I don't know, going out and making trouble or, I know what I did when I was a kid and I wasn't in a club. So, I do think it's...
Japan's the same as everywhere, every other country though, like we're talking about Tokyo, Saitama specifically.
Yeah, that's true.
You move to other areas closer to Osaka or out to the countryside.
Yeah. It's a different situation.
Very
That's true. That is true.
Very different.
I think, if you're a kid in a rural town, you're going to have a really different experience to kind of what we're describing here. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So one thing I don't hear I've never heard anyone mention this to anyone who actually is here, but, when stories make it to to my ears in the U.S. about Japan, one of the more frequent ones, and it's something that, it's not even directly Japan, it's whenever North Korea starts rattling their sabers. And I always hear, they could hit Tokyo, and Japan did this. And I find myself kind of sick in how unempathetic I'm like, it just happens so often. Yeah. But this is what is is it a high fear level? Because in the U.S., we don't have anyone that can actually, other than Russia and China, that can hit us with a nuke. Whereas, he is really unstable. Is it actually a fear here that something could happen? How's the feeling here?
I think so we get notifications like you do on your phone, right?
Yeah, that's got to be freaking you out, right?
It happens all the time. And the first time it happened, a Korean missile, or a Korean, it doesn't say missile, it says some really sort of generic kind of calm down kind of language.
Right.
It says something about like a projectile or something like that has been launched into the sea or whatever. And the first time it happened, we were kind of like, oh my God, what? What is happening here? But now it literally probably happens, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, we get this thing popping up on our phone. So I think the effect wears off after a little while, and you sort of think, oh, it's nothing.
Right.
I think it does for them as well. It's not a question I've really asked anyone that lives here, like, how much does this bother you? But for us personally, it becomes so common that it's just, you don't think about it as much. If you think about where Korea is and that it's so close, and that if they're going to test anything, they have to fire it into the water, right? Probably. So they're all going to come this way.
It makes no sense whatsoever for him to do that, because all he would do is be annihilated instantly over this, And
a lot of it is just because Japan has an alliance with America, of course, after the Second World War. They're not going to fire at America, so they fire at Japan to, to provoke a response, basically.
What about other potential conflicts in Asia? Like, if China wanted to take Taiwan, do you think that would have an impact in Japan at all?
I don't think so.
No?
No. I think Japan
So
very
it's
much
for the most part pretty
to
chill here.
themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, Japan is like that, isn't it? Yeah, it's
Unless it affects Japan, generally not much interest. They'll keep themselves to themselves, and that's that. Yeah, I think being from the UK, obviously we hear a lot more news about Hong Kong and those kind of issues with China and stuff, because the UK used to rule over Hong Kong. So, but from Japan, from a Japanese perspective.
How do you find relations between other Asian countries? Like, for example, I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and it's remarkable to me. It's remarkable how many people in Mexico are prejudiced to people in Guatemala or wherever. Or like, I lived in Silicon Valley for a while, so I worked with a lot of different Asians, and how there's a little bit of tension sometimes between the Koreans and the Chinese, and I mean, so what do you find? Is there any sort of inherent kind of like bigotry between Asian countries that you see?
It exists,
but
they're very good at hiding it.
Particularly towards China, I think.
Yeah, towards China and towards. It's just like anything. Like living in England, we had a lot of people coming from Eastern Europe coming over to England, and obviously the English people are not particularly known for working very hard, so these people from Eastern Europe would come over and work extremely hard for much lower wage, and then that generates that dislike of those people of coming over to work in England. And it's just the same kind of thing of maybe like Filipinos and people from Malaysia and those areas will come over to work in Japan, and I think sometimes those are the only countries I've heard mentions in that term. But it's not very common. It's not like England, where people's opinions are on the end of their tongue every conversation, and you hear it very often. I think if it is a common thing that people think, it's not voiced here. It's very rare for them to voice their opinion about anything that's confrontational in Japan as a general rule.
Or even if it's not confrontational, just generally speaking, people
to drag
keep
that
their opinion.
information out of someone, you'd have to be good friends, very close friends. It's not like you go up to a guy in the street in England and ask him his opinion on something and probably get a 10-minute monologue about what he thinks about it, and it's the complete opposite here. Just no one would tell you what they really thought.
Makes sense. What? How about entertainment-wise? So British TV, North American TV, or Japanese TV? I mean, you guys watching Netflix and binging stuff? Or you?
It's Netflix, isn't it?
It's just Netflix.
Not Japanese TV. Have you watched any?
Watching what?
Have you watched any Japanese TV since you've been
It's an
here?
experience.
The only Japanese TV I've been exposed to is sometimes I'll see clips of something that looks like Graham Norton on a meth binge, It's just
That's accurate.
Yeah, that's a good start.
It is so funny. That's such a soft-spoken culture. When you watch some of the stuff on TV, it's like, what is happening?
It's really big on the news and anything that centers around updating the people on important things at important companies. They have lots of stuff going on, and then comedy, reaction things. Comedy is really, really big here. Comedians are really have a lot of sway. In England, like you said, Graham Norton, they're just they're popular, right? Of course, but they're just TV shows hosts. But I think comedians here are pretty important people.
Most TV shows, things. If there are sort of any current events or anything like that, they always have these kind of programs here where in the corner of the screen they'll have these comedians or just general people.
Just their face.
Reacting to whatever it is with
Yes, I've seen those.
The big text.
They do something weird. They just show someone. YouTube reaction videos are popular, so I guess maybe that's where they came from. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
It's in the same vein.
They've been doing it for a long time, so maybe YouTube copied it from Japan.
So what's your favorite TV show you guys watch together?
Ooh, that's tough. Favorite TV show we watch together?
I'm just curious. So Japanese expats, expats in Japan. What do you guys watch?
You'd be surprised, when you're when you're here for this long and you're surrounded by Japanese culture every single day, and you'll find that when you go home to relax and you wanting to watch that kind of entertainment, it's generally not Japanese, because that you want a break from. It sounds silly, right, when you move here, but after you've been here a while and you get past that honeymoon phase and you get past that eating ramen for every meal because it's delicious, and you try to like cook really bad imitations of Western food, or you try and watch Western shows to try and get that feeling of home, I suppose. But I don't know, the most popular one we watched recently.
We like Survivor.
Survivor, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we watch American Survivor.
Not much Japanese.
And you're gamers anyway, so your entertainment's mostly
not much TV. We watched a couple of South Korean dramas. They're quite popular in Japan.
Okay.
With some subtitles.
Yeah.
What about this moment Korea's having in the entertainment culture with K-pop and Squid Games and
Games.
Parasite? Is it pretty big in Japan as well?
Yeah, really big.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, their success has kind of woken Japan's side up a bit to say, if you do put that extra effort in and make it to the level of, international level of quality, then people will watch it. And now that you can watch it on Netflix and Amazon and all these kind of things, that they're actually paying Asian TV companies to make these shows, and they will. Like obviously Squid Games was so popular because it was on Netflix. If there was no Netflix, how many people would still have seen Squid Games, right? So I think now that they have a platform,
it definitely helps. Yeah. Like I obviously Parasite. I didn't watch Parasite until it won the award, but I was like, well, I got to see this thing because for a foreign film to come in and win that award, it's got to be really good. It's got to overcome so much,
That was one of the first ones, right? I think.
Yeah.
One of the first ones. It was like really, really internationally popular.
K-pop is big here. There's whole Shinokubo in Tokyo. There's a whole sort of, it's like a Korean kind of area, and if you go there, it's all full of like Korean restaurants. You'll hear K-pop everywhere you go. It's there's lots of stores where they're selling all like the K-pop merch and things like that.
Korean food.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and you're playing football out here, right?
Yep.
So how are they compared to, because in England you're just, it's a huge thing. Is it big in Japan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think especially more recently. I think the guys I play with have been playing soccer in Tokyo.
Mostly Japanese?
A mix.
Mix,
50,
okay.
50, yeah, a mix of expats and Japanese.
Do they go after the British players because they think you're really good?
No, well, I don't know. I don't think so. No, the league that I play in has a lot of expats playing in it, and the league's been there for I think over 20-25 years now, so a lot of older guys have been playing in Tokyo since the mid 1980s, early 1990s, so, and they would tell us stories about when they first started playing, there'd only be like 4 or 5 teams, and the Japanese weren't very good, and they didn't want foreigners to join their Asian leagues. It was really difficult to get into a Japanese-only league. But I think in the last sort of 20 years, it has become much more mixed and accepting. I think to join Japanese leagues is still very difficult, but the league that we play in is kind of open to all. And there's lots of teams from Tokyo and Saitama, and it's probably about 50-50 between Japanese and expats. But the American Army base has a team in this league. There's like a team of teachers, a team of from particular companies will put teams in. So it's really good. I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's nice, and they try their best to speak English, and you try your bit of Japanese, and it's all with a generally good camaraderie as well. So I enjoy it. It's good.
Okay. So how about you? So he is, because you're not working right now, right?
I'm not working right now.
So he's working and playing football. So he has probably this whole circle. How do you meet people here?
Well, I mean, to be honest, most of the friends that I have are people that
mutual
I've met
friends?
through him. Yeah,
Okay.
sort of mutual friends. Yeah, because I mean, there's people that he went to university with here. So there's a particular guy that he went to university with. That's a friend of mine as well. In university in the UK. I mean, so.
Yeah, so he came from Japan to the UK.
Yeah, he did like an exchange. Yeah.
Okay.
I've met a few people here in some unique kind of situations. Probably in the first week or two that we were here, I was approached. I was just sort of. Do you know what Don Quixote is? It's It's just like a variety store.
Oh, Don Quixote. Yeah, I just went there today, actually.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So I was in one of these by where we live, and this woman approached me, and she just sort of. It sounded like she kind of wanted to try her English with me, so I talked to her for a little while, and she asked me if I wanted to go and have a coffee with her, and I said, okay, sure.
And this was still in the honeymoon period where we're like, we want to meet as many Japanese people as possible.
I want to practice my Japanese, you want to practice your English, let's do that. So we set up a time and I went to meet her for coffee, and she was really lovely. We were, showed me pictures of her cat and things like that. Right up until the point that she tried to recruit me to a cult. That was fun.
Yeah.
And then kind of after that point, we found, I don't know.
Yeah, we found out there was like hundreds of religious cults in Japan, and they often will target foreigners.
Yeah.
Generally a nice way. They'll ask you and give you pamphlets.
Yeah, they're really polite.
They'll take you off to a local church and give you some prayer beads, and basically you have to pay money into the church.
It's like a pyramid scheme kind of thing.
And then they give you
really
pamphlets
weird.
and you go off, and that's kind of how it works. Yeah.
So that was my first experience trying to make a Japanese friend. That was
So
a little
we're
bit
much more wary now. It's usually friends of friends or friends of colleagues or But I think either we've been quite lucky through our soccer team and their wives and girlfriends and friends
too.
and my colleagues at work and their partners. You just grow your social circle naturally.
Okay. How do you find, like, when you first meet Japanese people, are they kind of curious about you, or are they just kind of like, how do they feel about expats being here? Is it interesting to them or not really, or any sort of problems with it?
They wouldn't tell you your real opinion, their real opinion, even if you asked. So, I think the general feeling is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone and felt like they were against anything.
So no, you're taking our jobs or that sort of
being,
thing now.
definitely not to your face. That I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we've mostly had really the one incident aside, we've mostly had really positive interactions. Yeah, I mean, people are really keen to sort of, just kind of interact with you, even if it's just at a really kind of like superficial level. Like if you go out in Tokyo, you will be approached by people that will just talk to you randomly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
because you'll have people on language apps or on social media or just watch English Netflix maybe, and they practice their English, they're really interested, but their only opportunity without having to pay a lot of money to go to school or to get some tutoring is just to stop random people in the street and just have a go, and you'll find that they do that. They said, it's not all the time. You've not got a row of people, queuing up to try and speak to you, but from time to time, for sure, they'll stop you, or especially if you go to like a store or a clerk or something like that, and you buy something and they know a bit of English, you'll find they'll ask you where you're from and where you live and why you came here.
If you go for a beer, like at an izakaya in the evening, you will definitely wind up having half a dozen conversations with random people that just sort of want to. It usually it's the same conversation. You'll find everyone can speak
English after 2 or 3 beers.
Yeah, that's true. Someone will tell you, "I don't speak any English." In English.
In English. Yeah.
Most people.
What percentage of people are you finding speak English here now? I mean, is it increasing or is it?
For where we are, like outside Tokyo, I think we definitely expected less.
Yeah.
We expected it to be lower than it is.
Interesting.
In Tokyo, almost everyone you would come up with, maybe they're not fluent, but they can, sort of help out a little bit if they need to. Yeah. Even where we're from, I think most people. But you know what? Google Translate is so good. We get by just fine. I don't know if it's better or worse because we have Google Translate. It's just so easy to sort of.
Worse.
That's right. Yeah.
Worse for your language learning.
Yeah, it definitely is.
That's a good point. Is it making it better? Where it's like, I mean, my cousin and I have been in tech for a long time, and it's funny. We were joking about the fact that we always assume like Gen Z would be technological wizards, but no, they just push a button. They don't have to be. And so, as it gets easier with Translate, you just think they need to learn it less.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. You learn less because there's no.
You're not forced to.
There's no difficult way, through those difficult situations where you have to force yourself to learn. You know, how do I say this? And you'll remember that phrase because you've had that difficult conversation next time. You think, I know it's this, right? But just to be able to just show someone your phone or get them to speak into it, or the many ways you can use Google Translate, just it's so easy and fast. Of course, it's good, but it's a safety blanket.
It's a crutch.
Yeah, it's a crutch that slows down your language learning for sure.
That's interesting. So hey, Don Quixote. When I first heard this name, when I was reading, I thought it must be not what I'm thinking.
Mexican restaurant.
Because why is a major Japanese chain store named after like a 17th or 16th century Spanish novel? Other than it being crazy, can you figure out any sort of correlation here? Because I went and I didn't see any Don Quixote artwork or anything.
I am really not sure.
And that logo is a penguin, so
yeah, the mascot is a penguin.
yeah.
They just decided they just liked the name Don Quixote, right?
You see that a lot.
Which was the first one we went into?
It's the big one in
maybe?
Shinjuku.
Yeah, the first one we went to was a big one in Shinjuku, where the aisles are really,
this
really
wide,
thin.
yeah.
There's sort of product down this
If you
side
have a
and down this
backpack
side.
on, forget about it.
Yeah, we were just trying to squeeze past people.
Yeah, I was there today. It was a challenging store to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was super warm, and it's not something that I've really found that's different between England, Canada, and Japan specifically, is that they have lots of these little electronic screens that are playing a short advertisement video.
Oh, you sensory overload.
Ridiculously loud, and you'll walk down one aisle and there'll be 6 or 7 of these for different products, and you can't even really hear one of them specifically.
Right.
You just hear all 7 in a wall of noise. And you're walking through the store, and then you've got super bright lights and things flashing at you everywhere, and these little LCDs playing advertisements. Yeah, I hated Don Quixote when I went the first time. I thought, this is a headache.
But it is a store the Japanese use on a frequent basis. I mean, right?
You can get everything there, yeah. You can literally go in there, you can buy fresh food, you can buy a hairdryer, you can buy a washing machine, you can buy a couch if you want. Literally anything.
Because as American tourists, I'm just told that's where you go find all the Kit Kats. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's...
you can find all the Kit Kats there. Yeah, they have a lot of like omiyage, like snacks and things like that at places like that, yeah. It's also a good place if you want to try like sake. They have a lot of things that are, it's just a lot of stuff in one place, so it's a good place to go as a tourist. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, when COVID hit, I noticed that, like I was watching a video of someone interviewing Japanese people asking what they don't like about Americans, and one of the top ones was they don't wear masks. And it's funny because in the States right now there's this insane thing of, don't wear masks, don't get vaccinated, and it appears to be the exact opposite here. So I can only imagine those people coming here and they have experience with it. But even I feel like sometimes, like I forget my mask sometimes. In the States, it's not really a thing anymore, so I'll forget, and then I feel like a jerk, and like they're all like, oh, like okay, I'm covering.
We were the same.
How was it here for that? I mean, you were here for the lockdown, obviously. Was it?
We came. So we were supposed to come originally, just before
the major
lockdown. The initial sort of wave of COVID. Yeah.
Right.
So we were kind of stuck in limbo for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Waiting to be allowed to come into Japan.
Interesting. Did the school shut down then in Japan?
At times, yeah.
They did.
When they had their big national emergency and full lockdown, yeah.
And what's it like now in schools? Is it mask required still? And distancing and all that?
All masks inside.
Okay.
Everywhere indoors.
Interesting.
Everywhere indoors.
Yeah, it's not even just so. It's only been since at the beginning of the summer, the government said, okay, you don't have to wear masks outside anymore, and that's because it was so hot here this summer.
Right.
That it was 40 some odd Celsius on some days, so they said, okay, you don't have to wear masks outside. But there's not really been too much of an update since then, and pretty much anywhere you go inside. I mean, Japan, I guess Asia in general, but particularly Japan, there's always been kind of a mask-wearing culture here. So if you are ill, you wear a mask to sort of ensure that you don't make the people around you.
It's normal for them.
Yeah, but it seems like COVID came and it just never went away. I mean, you still see people outside wearing masks,
I mean, even before COVID, Asians wearing masks was something we'd see. I'd see them at the airport sometimes, some of that. And so it looks like it was culturally always not as weird of a thing as it was to us.
Which is why it's not a big deal to
right.
them. Like, even though the government says they can stop, it's not a case of them not listening. It's just their personal choice to continue. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like herd mentality that if everyone else is wearing a mask, then you probably should too.
Yeah.
Especially if you're an expat or a foreigner, because you already stand out. So to not wear one as well, just for not, unless you had a reason to do so, a good reason to do so, I'd advise against it.
So, do you think, is there concern right now over China opening up and travel? Is there concern on Japan about that?
I think that goes two ways, because Chinese tourists make up a huge amount of the tourism in Tokyo in particular. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money lost here to like small businesses and things like that, and big businesses, hotels. I think Japan was completely closed for so long that you saw a lot of small businesses that thrived on tourism sort of disappear completely.
Yeah.
So I think on one side you've got these businesses that are, dying for, tourists to come back, particularly Chinese tourists who spend a lot of money. And then you've got this other side where it's sort of, more COVID conscious, I guess. So you hear both sides here.
Yeah.
It's kind of a split.
Yeah.
I think there's advantages and disadvantages, but every time the NHK or whatever the news like broadcast that the rates are up, there's like, damn tourists. And then when they say, the Japan's GDP is up, then like, tourists have really helped.
Right.
It's peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Let me see, we're still going here. Yeah. So I got like a few minutes left, and I guess probably if someone's watching this video, maybe some of the most interesting things is for them is they're maybe looking at moving here. So what are your suggestions? I mean, you probably get this question a lot from family and friends over in respective areas, but what is the thing you tell them to do most and the things to watch out for most in making a move to Tokyo?
Learn Japanese first.
Learn
as
Japanese,
much as you
okay.
can. Yeah. It's unless you've got a really good support system here that can sort of act as translator, it is absolutely critical to at least have some basic language knowledge, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the language is a big one. I think just to set your expectations, if you've been here before as a tourist, really do kind of realize that you're not coming back as a tourist. You're coming back as and not just an everyday person that's going to go to work and come home and get into a routine. And I think realize that you're not going to be, hitting the onsens and the shrines.
Did that happen to you guys at any point? Did the novelty wear off and there was some concern? Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, in the same way that it would anywhere, I think. I've already been through that when I moved to the UK. I thought, it's amazing, I love it here, it's great. And then you realize, it rains every day. And, like the novelty kind of wears off. But I think the novelty wore off, but the shine kind of hasn't worn off, if that makes sense. I think we both still see a lot of positive things about living here that, maybe we wouldn't have if we were in the UK or Canada. But, that sort of rose-tinted glasses kind of phase is over.
Yeah,
where everything just seems
everything's
good.
amazing.
And every spare minute you have to go and do something Japanese because you're in Japan, right? Like once you've been here long enough, it just becomes normal. And I think preparing yourself for what that normal will be is really important. And also just expect it to be a stressful first month and try and prepare in advance as many things as possible. It's kind of like a chicken before the egg kind of thing when you get here, because they give you like your Zayu card and you have to register an address, but maybe you don't have an address yet. You're still staying in a hotel, and you can't get a phone until you get an address, and you can't get a bank account until you get a phone. And there's a lot of that kind of, we feel like you're just going in circles at times. So definitely have an address ready to register on the back of your Zayu card, because you cannot do anything without it.
Prepare for paperwork. That's the key thing. I think for me.
They do seem to enjoy paperwork.
There's a form that leads to a form that leads to a form.
And if you make one mistake,
you have to do.
You're not just going to white it out. You'll start again.
Just in the one day I've spent here, I could see that like I mentioned, the amount of rules just to go to the pool.
Yep.
And there's a protocol for everything. And if you break it, it's like, I accidentally walked into the club lounge thinking that's where breakfast should be. And the reaction would be like if I walked into Denny's with an AK-47. It's like, I mean,
yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah.
And it's not that it's you.
No.
It's more they're worried about if someone that's supposed to be in there or someone that walks by will complain about it. And reputation is everything for every business, perception and reputation. So that's why generally you'll be met so abruptly, is because exactly of that, what the people in the hotel might think, or for me, like other people, other teachers might think of anything like that. So you'll find that they're very quick to tell you if you're not supposed to be doing something because of how other people might perceive it.
So is that culturally one of the, so I mean, what's the biggest cultural hurdle that you've had coming over? I mean, personally, I'm kind of feeling like I'm a really nice, considerate person by most standards, but everyone here makes me feel like I'm an obnoxious American. Like within the first day, I'm like, oh, I feel very bad. And so, did you have any sort of cultural challenges like that?
The most difficult one for me was like the seniority, like hierarchy is very difficult to get used to. You know, I'm used to being in a workplace where you would approach your boss with the same kind of greeting and politeness as you would the cleaner downstairs, or you know, your friend that you work with. It's just everyone kind of gets that same polite. You know, hello, how are you doing? How was your day? Do you need me to do anything? You speak at that same level, but here it's really, really different, and it's almost like rude to the point where someone would complain about it if you didn't introduce yourself correctly to someone that was of a senior to you, or say good morning correctly to someone, or you know, stand with your back against the wall and bow when someone, you know, somebody's really, really focused on that. So I think it's definitely something that you have to get used to quickly, because it'll ruffle some feathers if you don't. So yeah, I think as a general tourist you don't experience it because you get that tourist card where everyone's like, he's just a tourist, like, don't worry about it. Once you get a job and it becomes a day-to-day thing, you will find people who will pull you up on it and tell you.
It's pretty quick.
That makes sense. Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys spending time. We did like an hour here, and this has been really interesting for me. I mean, all these questions I kind of wanted to ask people who live here, like you know, North Korean threats and what's the economy like, and the teaching stuff's been fantastic. So, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.